All right. I see you dancing there, Dr. Crystal. Welcome, everyone, to Life Extension Live. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm Dr. Mike, the Director of Education, and I am here with
Dr. Crystal. Hello, Oh, you got it right.
I did. Normally I get that wrong. I finally got it right. I know. All right. Well, thanks for joining me today, Dr. Crystal. Thank you, Life Extension audience, for joining us. So today, a very important topic. And listen, at the end of the day, there's a lot of different reasons why people have heart disease, right, Dr. Crystal?
Yeah.
I know the traditional doctors, there's maybe 6 or 7 risk factors. Life Extension has identified, I don't even know what number we're on anymore.
I think we're on 19.
19 risk factors, but the one that is consistent, the one that is pretty good at predicting a heart issue is high blood pressure.
Yes,
right?
And unfortunately, it's a silent killer.
Yep, you could go years and years and years and never know you have it, and every day just a little bit more damage happen, a little bit more damage. And
yes.
At some point you end up having a cardiovascular event. And so we wanted to talk about the latest research and some of our favorite nutrients, research supported nutrients, right?
Yes.
For helping people to reduce blood pressure. And so let's just get started right with that. The first nutrient right off the bat, this is a no-brainer for me, right? I think it's no-brainer for you. Magnesium. Tell us why that's at the top of our list.
It works. Plain and simple, in observational studies as well as clinical intervention studies, you see that over and over again, magnesium works in observational studies. We see that, in groups of people who have, the highest intakes of magnesium, they have lower risk of hypertension. For example, there's a meta-analysis that looked at about 180,000 people, about 20,000 of that 180,000 developed hypertension. And so now you can kind of break up those groups, and what the researchers saw for every 100 milligram per day increment in magnesium intake, there was a 5% lower risk of hypertension.
Yeah.
So,
that's
we have observational data, and as well as when we say intervention data, these are, the randomized placebo-controlled clinical trials. And they have a group taking magnesium and a group without.
Yeah. And so we also know, when you look at different diets that you could follow, one is called the DASH diet, which is specific for hypertension. Ultimately, what that diet does is it increases your magnesium intake, right?
Right.
And it's a great diet to follow. Here's the thing that I'm not sure if our listeners know. There's a good chance that many of us right now on this show currently are low in magnesium, that we're not getting enough magnesium on a daily basis. And at the end of the day, people are just low in magnesium, and that's not a good thing. The standard American diet is not providing magnesium like we need it. And there's other reasons, even if you are eating great food, great plant-based stuff, you can get into soil conditions, all kind of mineral depletion there. So people just aren't getting enough magnesium at the end of the day, right?
Yes, almost half of the U.S. population. So,
that's a lot.
Every 1 in 2, persons, they just are not getting enough magnesium, which, that's linked to the increases in the prevalence in hypertension as well as cardiovascular disease.
Yeah, I think it's, it may not be a direct, but it's definitely an association. So you had an interesting stat that when you were putting this together, that during the last century, dietary magnesium intake has declined from an average of 500 milligrams a day, right? Down to about 175 or something like that milligrams. So we used to get a lot more magnesium.
We used to.
Not the story today, right?
Not at all. And with supplementation, you want to look at least 350 milligrams, maybe even up to 1500 milligrams when you look at supplementation. So,
Yeah.
and really at this point, besides diet, and we should, as a nutritionist, I love to talk about the foods, the green leafy vegetables. You think about how many servings of those green leafy vegetables you're receiving per day. Nuts, seeds, whole grains, those are really good sources of magnesium. Legumes as well. So are you eating lots of beans? And unfortunately, as you mentioned, Dr. Mike, with the standard American diet, at least here in the US, we are eating processed or even what we call ultra processed foods. So whenever you take a whole grain such as rice or such as wheat, and you remove the nutrients, you remove the fiber, you remove, you turn the brown rice into white rice, you're
Mhm.
losing
Yeah. Yeah.
the nutrients.
Yeah, processing is that's what it does. You're losing a lot of what made that plant source so healthy. You're losing that as you over process, and of course, that's pretty much what we're eating. I want to come back to supplementation because I think this is a
Hmm.
big thing. When you start talking about minerals, specifically magnesium, people love to bring up what forms, like what types of magnesium. You got magnesium
Yes.
citrate, you got magnesium glycinate, you got magnesium oxide, all these different forms. And I think we're pretty clear now. The forms don't matter near as much as dose, and that's something I wanted to bring up. We know, Dr. Crystal, that some of the original studies that showed magnesium citrate being one of the best absorbed, they weren't looking at magnesium correctly, were they? Can you explain that for us?
No, well, 99% of total magnesium is intracellular. So if you just do a random, blood test for magnesium, you are missing out on the magnesium because it's in your cell.
Yeah.
So, when you start looking at the research that is more accurately evaluating magnesium, they are looking at what's called RBC magnesium, or the magnesium that's in your red blood cell.
Yeah.
And that will give you a better indication of your magnesium status.
Yeah, it's interesting. So one of the big studies that people like to talk about, and the conclusion was that magnesium citrate was more absorbable, but that was based on extracellular magnesium. In that same study, people don't know this, they also did check red blood cell magnesium, and guess what? All the different forms, oxide, glycinate, citrate, they were equivalent. So when you
Yes.
look at the correct way to measure magnesium, which is inside the cell, the different forms of magnesium, for the most part, are equivalent and well absorbed. So it's really more about dose. And I think, Dr. Crystal, what did you say? The range 350. You can even go upwards as high as 1500.
Yes.
That's and those are that 1500 is a high dose, but the only real downside is you might get some bowel stuff, and if that happens, you just decrease the dose a little bit. It's not
Yep,
bad.
it's bowel tolerance. Now we do have a question, Dr. Mike, that I think Diana asked, can magnesium be taken during the day and not make me feel tired? So she takes Calm at
Yeah.
night,
Yeah.
which is a magnesium that you can take. Do you want to address it? I have a few thoughts.
Well, you go ahead. I actually prefer taking magnesium more towards the evening. I know for me, it does calm me down, and I take it with my melatonin, and I love it. That's just how I do it. But I also know other people, Dr. Crystal, who do it during the day, and they do just fine. So I don't know what's your take on that?
I think with it depends on your dose. And obviously it's you have to determine how magnesium makes you feel. If you find that you take it at night, maybe, and you want to maybe take it earlier in the day, I would suggest taking a lower dose so you can divide it up. Some people may take 500 earlier in the day and then maybe another 500 at night. So you kind of have to play around with the dosing to see how you feel. I personally can take it any time of the day. It's very calming for me, very relaxing, but it doesn't make me sleepy.
Yeah.
So I don't find that, I take it and then now, I'm drowsy at my workstation. When I do take it at night, it is very calming and very relaxing.
Yeah, so I think maybe just a trial and error approach
Mm-hmm.
might be the best for most people. Start with the lower dose and work your way up. It's always best to start low and move up. So and try different times, split up the dose, and just find that rhythm that your body
Yes.
likes with magnesium. We're going to move on to the next nutrient, which really, in my opinion, when it comes to blood pressure, goes right along with magnesium. Right, they're almost like brother and sister or cousins or whatever analogy you
Yin
want to
and
give.
yang.
Yeah, and that's potassium. Tell us why that is so important.
Well, potassium helps to balance out magnesium, and as well as sodium. And so you find that people who are salt sensitive, meaning when you eat salt, you see increases in your blood sugar. We see that potassium can actually help the body to excrete some of that sodium. We know sodium is in everything.
Yes.
It's a preservative. And it makes our food tasty. I like salt, Dr. Mike.
I'm not going to lie either. We don't lie on the. Yeah, I like fat. I like salt, but again, it's just you gotta know where to stop, right? I guess I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I think what the problem is salt without potassium. I'm convinced of that. There is a ratio. It really should be about about 5-to-1 ratio of potassium to salt, and we just aren't there. Most people are salt heavy and lower on the potassium, and it should be this way.
Yeah, and that going back to what we said before, the DASH diet. That's the dietary approach to stopping hypertension. It's high in magnesium, foods that are rich in magnesium, but it's also high in potassium-based foods and lower in the sodium. You get in that diet, you're getting more of that appropriate, healthy ratio between potassium and salt. I wanted to ask a question because I think this is interesting. What kind of foods, and we can open this up to the audience right now. What do you think are the foods richest in potassium?
Ooh, and I have my phone now, so I'm looking at some of the
What foods do
comments.
you think supply? When I saw this list, I think there's a couple things on there that I didn't think about, and I think one of the food sources that a lot of people associate with potassium is way down on that list.
Let's see what's coming in.
What's coming in? We got to see here because we have a chart we're going to show in like 5 seconds. 4, 3,
Sweet
2.
potatoes.
Sweet potatoes.
Yes, that's from Donna. Oh, Simon says, Simone, besides bananas,
Oh, I think we need to throw the chart up, Robson. Don't forget Robson's our videographer and producer in the background here. Take a look at the chart. Here it is. Here's the top 10 potassium foods, and you got apricots at the very top. See, I thought that was surprising to me. I didn't realize that. Lentils, pretty surprising to me. I had heard about prunes. You got squash, raisins, you got your potatoes,
there
beans.
goes the potatoes.
But look what's at the bottom of the list.
Who knew?
Banana.
Well,
I mean, that's still bananas are still a good source, right? But
bananas are a great source, but I'll tell you what, if you're going to have canned soup, it better be lentil soup.
That's right. So, balance off all that salt that's in there. So, Dr. Crystal, out of all those foods on that list, which one am I allergic to?
Bananas. I knew that, Dr. Mike.
It's a weird allergy, but when I eat bananas, I break out. It's just a weird thing. I don't know. So that's our potassium. We had some research on this, right? We had a meta-analysis of a bunch of different studies. Meta-analysis is where you're looking at a group of studies and you pool that data. So you just get more data to analyze
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day. So a meta-analysis concluded that 1.64 grams per day higher potassium intake was associated with a 21% lower risk of stroke.
Yes.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's potassium.
Yeah. So our
And
goal, you listed here, the goal is 4.7 grams per day, right? You want to
yes,
get
which is 4,700 milligrams daily. Mostly, this is going to come from food, but you can get about 700, a little over 1,000 from apricots and lentils. About what was that, 400 or so from a banana. So you can make it add up.
Yeah, that's great. All right, now we got to move on. So that's magnesium. That is potassium. They just work together. They're part of the DASH diet. Fantastic nutrients, top of our list. We're going to move on to one now. I think some people are going to find this pretty surprising. What do you think?
I think so.
Our third nutrient, believe it or not, is melatonin. Yeah, we need more sound effects, Robson.
Yes.
I want sound effects.
I can do the sound effects, Dr. Mike.
No, please. All right, let's talk about melatonin. I mean, obviously, everybody when they hear that, they think sleep, right off the bat, circadian rhythms. But why? Tell us a little bit about what's going on with melatonin and blood pressure.
Well, it has a little bit to do with sleep. We're still thinking about melatonin, taking it at night, but it's helping to support around the clock blood pressure control. And what we see melatonin helping to do is to help your blood pressure dip at night. So whenever we sleep, our blood pressure should naturally decrease. That is very protective for the cardiovascular system. It helps to kind of give the blood vessels a break from all of that pressure during the day. And so we need that dipping to take place, and many people are what we call non-dippers.
So what that means is they're not getting that break at night.
Yes.
Right? Their vessels are just kind of constant in a higher pressure. They're not coming down the way they're supposed to come down. That also reflects a good circadian rhythm and is also beneficial to other aspects of your body, not just blood pressure. Melatonin has all kinds of effects in the body, right, Dr. Krista? It's not.
Yes.
We're learning more and more about this important hormone in the body, and it's pretty amazing. So melatonin, again, I don't, if you're already taking it, great. What do you think the dose here to get that? What do most people need to do?
Yes, I wanted to bring that up because a meta-analysis, another kind of grouping of studies, looked at studies or data from 7 studies. And they found about 2 to 3 milligrams of a controlled release melatonin.
Okay.
At bedtime, reduced systolic by about 6 points, and that's the top number, and the diastolic by about 3.5 points. So I wanted to bring up the controlled release. Even if you're, thinking about melatonin, you want to think about something that is going to kind of slowly release that melatonin over, 4 to 6 hour time span
versus one big dose for a couple hours, and that kind of wears off.
Yes.
So that's great. Melatonin. I'll tell you, I do 5 milligrams a night. That's my dose. I don't know.
5 milligrams for me is a little much. I start getting very vivid dreams, which is okay.
I like
that happens. But this is just like with magnesium. Melatonin is very, the dose is very personalized. So you want to, start off with maybe 1 or 2 milligrams, and then you can work your way up. I know people that, especially with research, we're seeing upwards of 20 milligrams, but for blood pressure and just some of the research that we're seeing with controlled release, it's right around that 2 to 3 milligram dose.
Yeah, so one night I apparently took 2 5 milligram tablets of melatonin, and that it was weird because it almost had the opposite reaction in me. Instead of sleeping well, I felt like I had just had some coffee or something. Like it ended up stimulating me more than actually putting me to sleep. So there is a right dose for each individual person. And again, there's nothing wrong with a trial and error approach.
Yes.
Start on the low side, work it up. I found for me 5 milligrams is that sweet spot, a little lower for Dr. Crystal, and that's perfectly fine. Foods for melatonin. Do we have anything? I mean, is there from a nutrition standpoint, or is it really just I have to replace the melatonin? My body's just not making as much anymore.
Right. It's usually something that you would want to replace. You do find some melatonin in pistachios, eggs, milk, but not really much.
Yeah, it's not enough to give you the effect that we're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't really even feel that. But I do love pistachios. That could be one of my favorites. There. Number 4. So I don't know if that you just moved on from that. Number 4 for our list of top nutrients for blood pressure is CoQ10. I mean, that's something we talk about a lot. That's ubiquinol CoQ10. Make sure you're taking, in our opinion, the ubiquinol form. I've told you how to remember that, right, Dr. Crystal?
No. How do you remember?
Okay, so the older form of CoQ10 is called ubiquinone, and it ends in N-O-N-E because none gets into your body.
No.
Ubiquinol is all gets into your body. Listen, I know that's not perfect. Come on, it's just in my own little analogy.
Your analogies, oh my goodness. Dr. Mike, ubiquinone, you still are able to absorb some of that, not as much as ubiquinol.
N-O-N-E.
So CoQ10, I when I started looking into developing, or we talked about coming up with our top 4. We actually talked to some of our scientists here at Life Extension, our researchers, and did a little poll of some of our doctors. What's your top suggestion?
Yeah.
And CoQ10 was one that I found just kind of doing some research, Dr. Mike, because the research is impressive. 100 milligrams. When you kind of look at a combination of studies, 100 milligrams resulted in a decrease of about 11 points of the systolic and 7 points in the diastolic. And that's after a roughly about 4 weeks of treatment.
Yeah, no. And listen, we've talked about CoQ10 for a long time for cardiovascular health. I have given it to a lot of people over the years. I take it, but it was more for the energy aspect of it. It was more for the ATP production of that. It was more for keeping the heart pumping at a good strength. It's that kind of stuff. It's even been studied in heart failure patients. CoQ10 is able to help people with weaker hearts get a little bit of a stronger heart. And so that's kind of where I've always focused CoQ10. But I think based on what we're seeing, at least in some of this early research, Dr. Crystal, we need to start talking about blood pressure and CoQ10 more.
I think so.
Yeah. Where are we going to now? Again, it comes down to supplementation because you're not going to get a lot of CoQ10 from food, right?
Right. I mean, it's very poorly absorbed from your food. And plus, animal organ meat is one of the top sources. And, people just aren't eating brain and liver as much as.
Wait, when I was growing up, every month we had liver and onions. It was my mom's way of getting us iron.
Well, I like liver and onions, Mom.
I do too. I didn't like the way my mom cooked it. It was horrible. I don't know. It was all just dry and yucky. But I went to a restaurant once. I decided to have it. This was when I was in Dallas practicing. And, the minute I started eating, I was like, this is awesome. That's not how my mom made liver and onions.
My mom makes great liver and onions. So hopefully she's visiting. So maybe we can put that on the menu.
Yeah, that sounds good. All right. So that's 100 to 300 milligrams. Again, where you're going to, that dose, maybe 100's a good place to start. I do 200 milligrams a day. I think that's a sweeter range for me. I don't know what you feel about that, Dr. Crystal.
Well, you can always test CoQ10.
Oh, there you go. That's a great suggestion. You can actually see. Start with 100 milligrams, 6 weeks later, test. See how much CoQ10 is in your blood. Or I guess first get a baseline.
Yes.
start
Work your
taking
way
it,
up. Mm-hmm.
work your way up, and then go retest and see, oh wow, maybe 100 milligrams is all you need. Maybe you did bump up a lot. I don't know.
Yeah.
So let the testing answer that for you. So those are, now listen, there's a lot of other nutrients that we could have talked about, right? Now we have a protocol that has a lot more, right, Dr. Crystal?
Yes, we have a high blood pressure protocol. It can be located at lifeextension.com/blood pressure.
Yeah. Lifeextension.com/blood, and it's not just about the nutrients. We talk about food there. We talk even about medications, right?
Yes.
Which, by the way, isn't it interesting? Magnesium, potassium, melatonin, CoQ10 can often be taken with medications and stuff. Like
Yes.
they complement a lot of the antihypertensive prescriptions that many people are on. So that's
yes,
good.
and we talk about that in the protocol as well.
All right, Dr. Crystal, fantastic job.
Yes, same to you, Dr. Mike.
So, I want to thank everybody for watching us. This is Life Extension Live. We go live every Wednesday, right? Every Wednesday. Mostly it's both of us. Sometimes it's just Dr. Crystal, sometimes just me. So please remember to join us every Wednesday at 3 o'clock Eastern time for more of these kind of shows. Dr. Crystal, thank you. Everybody watching, thank you. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.